you probably read officials are planning to spend $100 million over the year on what they're calling, quote, wartime recruitment to hire gun rights supporters and military enthusiasts through online influencers and targeted advertising campaigns. So Laura Jedeed, who I was just talking about, applied, and then the incredible story begins. Laura, we really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much and congratulations. I enjoyed every single word of the
So did
story. I
I.
said you're getting a real kick out of it. So tell people why did you apply to ICE?
Well, this story was not supposed to be what it turned into. I just wanted to write an article about the ICE hiring event in August down in Arlington, Texas. And I figured rather than, a lot of people wrote the article that needed to be written, which was, stand outside, you interview the people who are going in, you ask ICE declines to comment. And I decided I would do something a little different. I would apply myself and see what it was like. I'm a veteran. I've deployed to Afghanistan. My resume at first glance looks pretty good. I figured it would be enough to get me through the door. And then eventually they would look me up or put me in any computer and realize that I'm a pretty outspoken critic of ICE and the Trump administration, and that a lot of my work has been less than flattering. And then that would be the end of it. So I submitted my resume. I had a very brief interview, and they told me to wait for an offer, which I just assumed I'd never get.
So tell us about that interview. What was that whole thing in Austin like? The interview, the after, well, tell us about that whole day.
Yeah, so we all had to pick time slots on Eventbrite, the official platform of the government, I suppose. And usually when people when people ask you to pick a time slot, it usually means that they're expecting to get mobbed. They don't want everyone to come all at once. Well, I picked 9 a.m., which I thought would probably be a decent time. And maybe every other hour of the day was mobbed. All I can tell you is that when I went, there were no lines to get in and barely a line to get interviewed, and probably no more than 150 people there at any moment. This venue, the Arlington Esports Arena, seats thousands, for context. I waited briefly, got up to my interview, which was a very normal seeming person just across from a folding table. She asked me some very basic questions, name, date of birth, where did I served, how long had I been out, where did I want to sit stationed, all this stuff that I really could have been a form. I assumed it was a pre-interview, and then it finished, and she was like, okay, looks good. Sit tight, and we'll get you a tentative offer as soon as we can. It'll come via email. Might come today, but we're prioritizing law enforcement experience, so it might be a couple days. And that was the end of the process. We had an option to talk with an ICE agent to see what the job would be like, not part of the interview. And I did do that, but that was it.
What was your
Didn't you?
expectation coming out of that about what was going to happen, if anything?
I mean, I figured that was it. I figured my hope was that they wouldn't be angry. I thought if they, caught on while I was there, things might get a bit odd. But I figured, when I'm out of sight, they'd figure it out. They wouldn't be that mad. I just wouldn't hear from them, and then I would write my small article about this event that would not have really made very many waves at all, which is not what happened.
So we can assume they did not Google you because your stories would have shown up that you'd written or looked at your social media. Didn't
And there
you?
also aren't many Laura
No,
Jedeeds.
that's right.
There's one. There's
One,
exactly
Yeah,
you,
it's
one.
not
yeah.
like you're Susan Smith or anything like that. The other thing is, didn't you mention that you smoked some weed and they didn't ask about that, or what was the deal there?
Well, that was so. Just really quickly, I got the tentative offer a week later. I didn't see it because I wasn't looking for it. They said it would be a couple days at most, and I just didn't think I would get one at all. So I missed the tentative offer, didn't fill out any of the paperwork they filled out. And yet, 3 weeks later, I received an email that I did see, which was, thank you for your interest in the ICE process. As your next step in this hiring process, please take a drug test. Well, cannabis is legal in New York. I'd smoked some about 6 days before that test, but why not, right? I went ahead and I took the test anyway, expecting to fail.
And did you hear whether they knew if you failed or not failed? Nothing.
Well, that's what prompted me to finally check the hiring portal, which I suppose I should have been doing all along. Because when you fail a drug test, they are supposed to call you, or at least that's my understanding. So when I didn't get the call, I was like, well, is it possible that I passed? I mean, miracles happen. I'll log in and find out, I guess. So I logged in, and what I found was that the drug test results hadn't come back in at that point. But what I did see was that it listed me as having received a final offer, as having accepted the final offer, and of having an EOD date, an entry on duty date of September 30th, 2025, which was 3 days before I had checked.
Can we go back for? Can we go back for? I mean, it's we're laughing, but it really isn't funny, obviously. Can we go back for a second? You glossed over, you didn't submit any of the paperwork. Some of the paperwork, based on your piece, is pretty relevant and important if you're going to have this kind of law enforcement responsibility. Explain to people what they were theoretically looking for.
Yes, and it is. I think it's pretty funny that they almost hired a journalist who's very openly does not
Without a
like them.
doubt.
But what's not funny is that, for example, I didn't fill out the paperwork that certified that I'd never been convicted of a felony involving domestic violence. I didn't send that in. If they didn't check that, they don't know. I didn't send in medical paperwork. I didn't send in my background check paperwork. And my background check was listed as having been completed on October 6th. I checked on October 3rd. So it had already been completed in the future, which I don't believe, first of all, because of temporality, but also because, in addition to my dislike of the Trump administration, my very vocal criticism of it, my father is from Syria. The Jedeed is a Syrian name. He immigrated in the 70s. When I got my security clearance in the military, I got it several months after my peers because they had to check all that.
Yeah.
And the fact that they had no questions about that makes me think they really didn't check at all.
Was this at the time that the $50,000 offer for sign up was there? And
Yes, it was.
you would think that would entice more than a few people to show up at 9 o'clock, because that's a lot of money. Did they tell
Yes.
you, when they gave you an offer, did they talk a lot at all about training at any point in this interview process or in the paperwork?
Not in the interview process. The paperwork had a bit of a handbook that outlined some of the physical requirements and stuff like that. And while I was at the hiring event, at one point, a senior agent came on stage to answer some questions from the crowd, and almost every single question from the crowd had to do with training. They seemed especially concerned about whether they'd have to get tased to be certified on tasers, get pepper sprayed to be certified to use pepper guns. They were assured that if they'd been through law enforcement, maybe they'd have to go through it again, but we were all promised brand new pepper ball guns that we could use specifically on protesters in liberal cities. That was explicit.
Laura,
In liberal cities.
yeah.
Yes.
Laura, we're talking to Laura Jedeed, who wrote your original piece. We should have said, was this in Slate? Well, where did you write the
It was
original?
Slate
And
magazine.
It's really, and while we're thrilled to talk to Laura, you should read the whole piece. It is really amazing. I was thinking of you last night after I read what the government response to your piece was. You'll share that in a minute. It came the same day that when some reporter tweeted Carolyn Levitt to say the president just mentioned Iceland 4 times. It's Greenland, isn't it? And her response was, no, he didn't, essentially. That's the government's response to you. You got a job offer. In the thing you wrote, you showed the image, the screen grab of the offer, and their position is, no, you didn't, right?
Yeah, and that seems to be the default position of the Trump administration. I think people sometimes think of their lies as a sign of weakness, and in some ways it is. But the fact is, I think they believe they can speak reality into being, and the more egregious the lies they tell and get away with, the more powerful they must be. In their universe, the strongest person gets to decide what the truth is, and we saw that, in the small example of my article where they looked at, there was a video of my screen, and their response wasn't, "We'll look into it," or "This isn't what you think it is," or "This looks this way but is this way." It was, "No, it didn't happen." We saw the same thing with Renee Good's shooting, where we saw from
Exactly
multiple
right.
angles that Good was attempting to swerve away from the driver, and that he was not he was not hit, and yet they say that he was sent to the hospital and had internal bleeding, despite the evidence of our lying eyes. Trump says Iceland 4 times. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. They really believe they can speak reality into being, I think.
Laura Jedeed, I know this is obvious if people have listened to or read your story, but so for those to whom it's not that obvious, what are the takeaways from your experience in terms of who are applying for and getting these jobs?
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is that unless this was a fluke that involved only my application, which I find very unlikely given that this was a mass hiring event, not only do we not know who the people behind those masks in our cities terrorizing, brutalizing, now murdering people, we don't know who they are, but it's possible ICE doesn't know who they are, and it seems they don't care who they are. This is not normal. This is not the sign of a healthy organization that's making some mistakes or has bad leadership or with a few bad apples. This, to me, is a sign of a really profoundly deep dysfunction and apathy for the safety of American people, ranging from the ICE officers themselves, which I don't personally care much about. But if I did care, I would be concerned about people unvetted being deployed in the field next to other ICE officers, but more importantly, the American people who are being subjected to this horrible violence. This is not normal. This is an emergency.
By the way, the rumor I've heard is you're next applying to be Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services. Is that true, or is that Laura Jedeed?
Well, I've made all my Botox appointments, so we'll see if those go through.
Your piece was fabulous and really eye-opening. Thanks for spending
thank
some
you
time
for a
with us.
great piece of journalism, Laura. It really was stunning and shocking. Thank you for joining us.